Hello, viewers. Namaste. Welcome to Jaipur Dialogue USA and Jaipur Dialogue. And today, before I begin, I wanted to request you to like, subscribe, and support our channel. And should you be visiting India, if you have plans, then do come to Jaipur for our annual festival, where we have a battery of really good thinkers who are assembling to talk about India at a crossroads. So let's begin. Today was a remarkable day. There was, Mr. Jaishankar, who I'm a big fan of, ever since he declared that the world will see a muscular approach to India's foreign policy. He has been living it through and through. Living it through and through is not something like, just basking in the glory of an unforeseen or unwanted or unknown facts and figures. This is displaying India's strength in the World Forum with phrases and words which conveys that India means business. This speech, which I had the privilege of listening to, was truly remarkable. He did use one of my favorite phrases, which I often use in my show and in my conversations with people, that when you find something wrong going on, you need to call it out. That's my favorite phrase. If you don't call out what is going on as a wrong thing, you let it pass, and that becomes a new narrative. So today, Mr. Jaishankar in the United Nations, he did use that phrase that you have to call out when something is going wrong. Let's begin. This particular speech, I have only one thing to say. It had several quotable moments. Assertion of India's position, acting on those assertions, creating an awareness and awakening in the eyes of the global South, the world leadership, and calling out the Western domination. He didn't mince his words. As it says in the political and diplomatic jargon, you can call somebody whatever you want without calling him as such, without naming names. It's called the element of deniability, as well as conveying the message straight up. So let's talk about that. Recently we all know we have been very struck with the issue of one Khalistani being killed on Canadian soil. Nobody knows the truth as yet. The disgusting part is that in front of the Gurudwara where the killing happened, even the Canadian Mounted Police and the local police did not attend to the issue for long hours. The videos, CCTV cameras were not used for any purpose. Now, the important part is even the local people who were there, they complained about the late arrival of police. So think about a country that has no guts to gather evidence, its prime minister is openly talking in parliament that they have credible evidence. The world is no longer willing to be fooled, and people are calling it out. So this is important here. When you call something out, that puts pressure on the other group of people. So let's take on one by one. When he talked about, very, very openly, he said that the political convenience should not dictate the response to terrorism, extremism, and violence. This is important because when India was going through the Islamic terrorism and Khalistani terrorism in the country, the West used to make a joke out of it, as if those were the calls for breaking India. So democratic aspirations of India's secessionist forces was okay. After all, what the hell is there? If India breaks, it's their problem. But unfortunately, this country, United States of America, where I live and I'm a citizen of, experienced an untold misery and tragedy of 9/11. It was then that America went on a rampage in Iraq, Afghanistan, and everywhere else, including the statement, either you are with us or not with us. When you make such bombastic speeches, you have to follow it through an action. So Jaishankar was absolutely right in calling out that you cannot apply response to terrorism, extremism, and violence in a selective manner. That's what is important. A political convenience. I can kill Osama bin Laden because he was my terrorist, and I'm proud of it. I'm definitely proud of it. But when a Sikh terrorist is taken out, most likely in a gang war, inter-gang war, but you make it as India's invaded Canadian territory, that needs to be called out. And Mr. Jaishankar did exactly that. The other element which comes very important, the responsibility, respect of territorial integrity and non-interference in internal affairs cannot be exercised in cherry pecking. Another brilliant statement. You cannot dictate to others what you consider to be moral high ground. Even in today, if you have seen those, some of the congressmen, Eric Swalwell from California and a couple of others have spoken. This must be the congressional hearing to do that. Yes, sir, you can definitely call for congressional hearing, but Mr. Eric Swalwell, you have to then call congressional hearing on many more issues than just this. And that gives me a thought. Why does an Indian parliament and Indian intelligentsia discuss the infirmities and dualities and double standards of other countries in India? I'm speaking this as a former Indian citizen and a lover of India. I love my country back home, and I love this country as strongly as I do. But I do not like double standards. One for me, the other one is not for you. It's like saying that heads I win, tails you lose. That's the issue which is very important for the rest of the world to begin to assert. And what has happened is, in the last G20 onwards, ever since Prime Minister Modi came to power, he has established the credibility and credentials of India rather strongly in the eyes of the world. Today, amongst all the leaders in the world, I can definitely say that Prime Minister Modi emerges as a statesman on the world arena. Who would have thought about the global south to be included as a G20 first nation? Including that, who would have thought that G20 will have a unanimous resolution with full consent on every single issue, starting from Ukraine to climate to seizure of assets of terrorism and extremism people? That's what is important. And India showed it by seizing the assets of Mr. Panun and others who were campaigning and giving calls for Hindus to leave Canada. Can you imagine? Has Canada done anything about it? No. And thus, the next statement was equally important when he says the rule makers must ensure that rules apply equally to everyone. This is another very critical important, particularly when the West, in America, we talk about the famous DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. We talk about DEI initiatives. We talk, the Democratic Party openly talks about equity and equality. Equity and equality are good words. That has to be the ultimate ambition of any civil society to bring for its citizens. No doubt about that. But you cannot establish equity and equality if you do not apply the rules equally to everybody. That's important. And that's what has been called out. This is a very, very important part to recognize for everybody. Now we are living in an era where news travels faster than the speed of lightning, as I often say, in jest, not necessarily true, but that's what I'm talking about. Today, news travels faster than the speed of lightning, and we do not anymore rely on the traditional newspapers to read news or get news. News moves faster than anything else. So this is what is critical to understand and recognize, that when United Nations Security Council members, respectable, honorable members, 5 members, there is a 5I. We heard about NATO. Think about it. These are essentially clubs to dominate as a new imperial tool, the dialogue and debate and discussions, what suits you to. So think about it like this. Let's begin with NATO. NATO is the only alliance in the world which is a wartime membership club. It's a war club. It's a war club. If you challenge, if you have a difference of opinion with any NATO member, all NATO members will come to fight with you. Is there any other group like that anywhere in the world? No, there is none. So why must NATO must have an alliance of this kind? Whoever are your enemies, deal with them, collectively or individually. But why must you have a NATO organization? It's a military alliance. It's a war club. Likewise, the Five Eye that uses satellite technology to spy on everybody else. So these people, like the Five Nuclear Club, think about it. Five Nuclear Club, nobody else must have it. And I must give credit to Rajiv Gandhi. He was the one who in Washington told that why not make a nuclear-free world? Why must only 5 countries in the world be supposed nuclear powers, and who drive the agenda for everybody else? Remember this, there were 5 leaders who had formed that group for nuclear-free world. Rajiv Gandhi and Olof Palme of Sweden were 2. I don't remember the names of other 3, but I'll find out sometime later. But as a very famous Indian journalist was to point out, all 5 died unnatural deaths. All 5 died unnatural deaths. Rajiv Gandhi, Olof Palme was stabbed to death while coming out of a theater in a late night movie. This is what is important for us to know. And this is, what Jaishankar ji said, when reality departs from rhetoric, it needs to be called out. My favorite statement. This is what the American slang says. When you heap BS, don't give justification for that. And that's what has happened here, that Jaishankar ji spoke openly and very clearly that United Nations Security Council is membership that India seeks to and India qualifies to in this particular world is not for self-aggrandizement, but it is to take on additional responsibility. So India has arrived on the international scene. India is truly awakened. A reason is asserting and acting. The 4 A's that we need to be very cognizant of in moving forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends who are watching it, please go and listen to his speech. It's very important. The rule-based, this is another important element. Rule-based code of conduct, then rule must apply equally to all. I repeated this one because this particular speech was absolutely, call it shakedown, smackdown, or calling the truth as it should be. Truth is harsh, truth is bitter. And the final word, remember, United Nations Security Council members, all 5 of them, are the largest exporter of arms and ammunition around the world. If they wanted genuine, authentic peace, all they have to do is to end the supply and sale of that. Why not? Think about it. We'll come back to you on these matters later again. Thank you for watching. As I always say, Satyamev Jayate, truth must triumph, truth will triumph, and truth must triumph. And for that, we have to speak up. Thank you.